Get started since it's about 7 o'clock now. Thank you guys for coming. This seminar about some custom pinball. I want to introduce everybody we've got up here. You probably already know Scott Denisi, the designer of Total Nuclear Annihilation. Probably one of the best games in a long time. It's a cool game. Scott started that game out as a homebrew game, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that game was built by myself, pretty much myself only, and just built in my house, in my garage. We can go into more details about, like, you know, how I did and stuff later.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and then next to me is Wilder Ham. Wilder owns State Point Video Games in Charlotte. And is also working on a Legend And I'm John Marsh. I'm working on Spaceballs pin. And yeah. Yeah. So what we really want to talk to you about tonight, we also want you guys to ask questions as we go along. Don't be afraid to interrupt. It's not rude. Just ask a question, raise your hand, whatever you want to do. We want to talk about the different ways to do custom pinball and how you can really get started at it. Because I think the thing I hear a lot from people is there's a lot of skills required. I don't know where to start. It's probably really expensive. I don't know how to write software. I don't know how to do all the wiring. I don't know what to do inside the pin to make it do what I want to do. So tonight we really want to talk to you with some experience about how to get started in that. You know, there's free and low cost ways to actually get started making your own pin. It's pretty awesome. Before you even talk about soldering wires together and flipping flippers and stuff like that. I don't know, what do you guys have to add to that?
Well, I mean, it's a good one, but I think starting with how to actually go about thinking about a design and doing something that doesn't cost money is a really good starting point. Like the two ways that at least I can think of are building a game in something called Future Pinball, which I don't know if you guys are aware of what Future Pinball is, but it's it's kind of like a pinball emulator, but you can actually design the game directly in the computer, right? It's just a free piece of software, and you can actually flip it, right? You can like shoots a virtual ball in there, you hit your shift keys or whatever, and you can flip a game, but you can add things like ramps and targets and that kind of stuff in it, and just play around. That, for most people, is just really fun because there are a lot of people out there that don't actually want to build a physical machine, but they want to build something that they can share with other people and still be in that pinball realm. And I've seen a ton of those. In fact, someone actually built my homebrew game in virtual pinball form for the computer on that platform. So it was really interesting. I don't know if you guys ever did that. I don't have any experience with it.
I haven't personally. It took me like probably a year or more of planning. I did a retheme. So I took a Gottlieb's Gladiators, which was originally designed to be a Zelda, and had to figure out how to best use all the inserts and shots and make rules around them that made sense to fill the table out. And that took a long time of planning. So I didn't have to design a playfield, which is super hard. But you know, there's still lots of other hard stuff to do outside of that, including the programming. So yeah, I have it the easiest of all these three. So.
Well, that brings up a good point. There's two distinct ways you can make a custom pinball. You can retheme one that's out there, or you can start from scratch and kind of make your own, design your own playfield. That's really hard to do right. I think I've gone version 7 or 8 of the Spaceballs playfield, and it still doesn't play as good as any game you buy out there. So it does take, unless you're just naturally talented at it, or figuring out all the geometry and how to actually make a game feel good is really tough. Like, you really have to know what you're going for. So even kind of the junky or commercial games from the past where you're like, that game wasn't any fun. Well, maybe it's not any fun because of the rules suck, or the software sucks, or the theme sucks. Looking at a game like that to retheme kind of gives you some working geometry. Like, maybe it's not the best playfield in the world, but it's still a working playfield where you've got all the mechs already on there, and the geometry works, and they've figured out where a lot of the ball catches are going to be, and you know, they've done a lot of hard work for you, like the plastics are the right shape. you may sand them down and get the art off of them and put your own stickers even on there or something, but they've really done a lot of the hard work for you. You know, you get a cabinet that's already there, doing that stuff in custom. You go through 3 or 4 versions and you're like, man, I just realized I made the entire cabinet a 1/4 inch too thin. And now I get to start over. That actually happened. So, yeah.
Sounds a little bit specific.
Yeah, that actually happened. So yeah, I think Scott went the custom route, and Wilder did the retheme, and I'm doing the custom route.
Absolutely. I think I'm on the furthest extreme of it because every single thing I did was custom. That game has, obviously a custom playfield. The production model has a custom cabinet even. That cabinet that you guys see, the production total illuminations in, is actually something that Spooky didn't even have. It's basically a Rob Zombie cabinet that I modified to take the glass level down so that it's like more level with the playfield, like the old 80s games they had. So, but yeah, I mean, I can talk about the way that I did it. I think it's a little bit extreme for someone just coming out and building a homebrew game. I have my background, first of all, is already in the pinball industry. I'll give you like a little history of where I'm at and what I do for a living, and I guess it'll sort of make a little bit more sense of why I took the approach that I did. So I work for Pinball Life, it's a parts company. I'm the engineer over there. I do mechanical and electrical engineering for them. So all of the parts, like a scoop or a slingshot assembly or a circuit board or whatever you buy from them, is most likely something that I've engineered, most likely from scratch or most likely derivative off of something that has been proven in the past, like a Williams part or something like that. But that is my day job. So that is what I do. So what I have tools that I use at work and at home. I use like 3D programs that model things. So I was able to take my homebrew game and completely model it in 3D in a CAD program called SolidWorks, and really get the angles down before I was, cutting a playfield with a CNC machine. That really helped a lot. It's not something that normal people have access to or the drive to do it. There are a ton of open source 3D CAD programs like that, that if you have enough time, you can go in and learn those and do all that same exact stuff. But the whole thing is just the time and if you have the drive to want to learn that kind of stuff. But that's where I started. So that's actually how it actually started, from something I was just doing in my spare time. I would go to work, I would say, hey, we got this new part, right? Oh, hey, look at this, a generic scoop, because I had to engineer a scoop for Charlie, for Spooky Pinball, because they wanted something,
Because ours sucked.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that, but yeah, it was awful. It was really bad.
You're taking it a little far.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was just, yeah, what he said. So, so we re-engineered that, but then I'm looking at it, I'm like, well, I can make a pinball machine, I'm working on this. I'm going to use the generic scoop that we sell, so I'm going to take one home and start playing with it. So, anyway, that's how I did it. I don't really recommend that for people. When people ask me if they want to build a game, I say take a piece of plywood, draw on it with a pencil, start playing around with it. If you feel confident about what you've drawn on there, take a router and a drill and just start drilling holes in a cheap piece of wood. Screw some mechanisms onto the bottom of it that you pull off of an old pinball machine. You can just, most of us have like extra parts like in our garage and stuff from just fixing our machines over the years. But take some of that stuff, throw it on there, and just see how it all works out. But that's a good place to start for just somebody who doesn't have the CAD experience.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Just drill.
So I don't know how you guys did it though too. I mean, I know you already had an existing playfield and existing stuff.
It was easier for me, for sure.
Yeah. Did you have to do any CAD work at all?
No, not really. I mean, really the only thing I had to do was make inserts for, or the raised caps that we made for LEDs, for the fast LEDs. But yeah, my table, I guess I've always played pinball, but I don't work in pinball. I have a video game store, and I have no programming background whatsoever before this project, and was able to get my feet wet by, I feel like the easy part was the wiring and getting everything required putting it onto the fast pinball boards. And then when it came to programming, that's what I've spent the last year on, and I really haven't moved too far, but I'm getting there. It's definitely a learning experience, especially with zero experience. If you don't know anything about programming, you can still program pinball. There's a great community for it. Everyone's really nice. I have tons of questions for them, and there's always answers. So it's one of those things where, if you're making it yourself, you're going to run into errors all the time, and overcoming them, you find a new error, and that's just how it is. You get used to problem solving, and then eventually you have a product that you're happy with. For me, Zelda is something that will never be done. I can write all the rules, I can add all the animations and light shows and stuff, but there will always be tweaks that I want to make to it. Even if I go on to another project, even if in the public eye it is a finished product, it will never be done to me. But it's, again, for me, I picked a machine that had some history and was able to maybe change it back to the way that it was supposed to be. I talked to John Norris, who worked at Gottlieb. He didn't have, when Gottlieb shut down, they didn't allow him to keep any of his work or anything. And so I asked him, I sent him a message on Facebook, and I was like, hey, I'd really like to finish this. I'd like to turn this machine into a Zelda machine. What can you tell me about it? And all he really was able to offer was that the game was supposed to be based on the Super Nintendo title, A Link to the Past, which is my favorite Zelda, personally. And so I went from there, just kind of slowly designing rules and ways to make the playfield fun, and that's pretty much it.
Scott mentioned the drilling and cutting on the playfield and kind of making it up as you go. That seems to work out really well. You come up with these really grand plans to start with. I'm going to have this, and this thing's going to be awesome, and you figure out there's not enough room.
Well, that's why we still don't run a plan, because there's X amount of shots, there's X amount of inserts, and how to use them wisely and make the game make sense was difficult for me. It didn't come naturally, so it took me months and months of trying different things and putting it on paper and seeing where it got me, and eventually I found something that I was mostly happy with. I think I initially bit off way more than I could chew. I wanted 12 modes or something, and it was like, okay, that's way too much. We're not making Twilight Zone. We're making something very simple.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that, the milestones where you actually feel like you've accomplished something.
Getting your machine on and flipping is one of the big ones.
Yeah, everybody knows that feeling that first time they flip, and it's like, damn, it might actually work.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, it's actually way easier to get a pinball machine flipping than people think. Right?
Yeah.
You can do it with a 48-volt power supply, System 11 style flipper mechs, 2 high-power flipper switches on the side, and basically just dump 48 volts at that System 11 mech, and it has another stroke switch on it, so it'll take care of itself, and that's it. Your game, you just turn on that power supply, and your game will flip. Put a ball on it, just
Make it go ding ding. That's what.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things I see people trying to overcome when they start building a machine is like, oh, I don't know how to get it flipped or how to get it flipping. I've got a P-Rock system or a fast system or whatever. They're like, first of all, those systems are way too complicated for you to test your geometry. Some people do go that route where they put the actual systems in at the beginning when they're testing things, but you don't have to, and I actually don't recommend it. In fact, I don't do it that way. And I had WPC flipper mechs on Total Annihilation when I built that, and I didn't even have any stroke switches on it. I just was like, hey, if you're gonna flip that game, don't hold the flipper button down, because it's gonna overheat my coils. It's like, it could be that simple. It's no big deal. It's really perfect for testing the geometry, making sure stuff works. And I have stories all day about how that didn't work the first time. So, yeah.
We're about a quarter of the way through now. When we stop and see if anybody any questions.
You mentioned P-Rock and fast ports.
Yeah, so the two main, more expensive types of control systems out there for pinball machines there's a company called Multimorphic that makes a product called P-Rock, and there's a company called Fast that makes the Fast controllers. Basically what these controllers enable you to do is hook up a computer, like a laptop or anything you have, desktop PC, whatever. You plug them in USB, and it enables you to then send commands from that computer to the actual pinball hardware. So it's the interface between a computer and the pinball hardware. So it has things like switches and lights and controls and all that stuff that it can talk to.
I mean, I've seen the wiring in the pinball machine, and it seems like miles of cable.
Oh yeah, I mean you can have unlimited amounts of them. Those pieces of systems are all configurable. So if you need 16 switches, then you only need like, you know, one of these boards. If you need like, you know, 64 switches, right? You know, you just add more boards to it. Everything talks. Yeah, everything daisy chains together, and it's totally expandable. Yeah. Yeah.
So what the fast systems are some of these other systems, is it just the switch matrix control, and then you need a separate power driver system, like almost like a solo driver board to power the poppers and flippers?
Yeah,
All that
so
48 off the train.
what's interesting is these systems are all like, they're not all in one, but they have all of those pieces to them. So they have switch inputs, they have light outputs, they have coil drivers, they have servo drivers. There's all sorts of cool stuff that.
Essentially, all you really need is just a brain after that,
Yeah.
a computer of some sort to.
I thought you were talking to him.
A brain, no, it's much easier to do pinball than that. If I can do it, you guys can do it.
Yeah, I mean, you can just get a crappy laptop and just install the stuff on
that's
it,
what
and then just, yeah, I mean, it works fine.
Yeah, a lot of people, I think I do get that question a lot, like what kind of computer should I buy to put in my pinball
It doesn't
machine?
take much to run it.
The one you got, like, just use the
Yeah,
one you got, right? Everybody seems to go out and buy a bunch of stuff, like, oh, I gotta buy a new cabinet, I gotta buy all this and that. Use the stuff you got. You know, like Scott said, dig around. Everybody's got flipper mechs somewhere in their closet if they've got pinball machines. You got coils somewhere, right? I mean, get it set up on your workbench. There are people that even use those foam boards. You know, they're like 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch thick, the foam core coaster boards. There are people that, you know, sandwich you those 2 of those 1/4 inch ones or whatever. And that's solid enough for you to mount some flippers in and move stuff around on the foam core and see how it shoots and feel around for that. You know, a lot of people don't think that'd be strong enough, but it actually works decently well for prototyping.
Home Depot plywood is super cheap.
Yeah, it's like 20 bucks a sheet, right?
Yeah, they'll cut it for you, like while you're there, like just.
Yeah, so like you said, you can bondo holes up, you can move things
Yeah.
around. So it's really nice to be kind of in the moment and figuring things out because, you know, like I said, I tried to figure out the play field from the start, and first time I cut it, I took the hard route as well. I did all the work in CNC and Fusion, 3D, and then CNC cut it. It's like, man, it's a horrible play field.
Yeah,
it's
you
just
do
really
that.
bad. It shoots terrible. It's just not fun at all.
But it looked good though.
Yeah, it felt great on the computer. I was like, man, that's gonna be great to shoot up there and that. And then everything it was breaking off or just wasn't doing right, didn't feel right.
I think it's really hard to make a unique playfield that hasn't been done, or, well, you know, that feels good. You can make a playfield, but can you make it fun? That's one of the hard challenges for making your own playfields.
Yeah, I mean, everything's been done already, so that's another thing that you need to kind of accept a little bit. Like, it's very, very hard to think of something that hasn't already been thought of in pinball, especially even if you look back at games from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, all the EM games out there. Like, they have done so much of the innovation in those era of machines that you can even see in the 80s and 90s where it was like, well, now we can do ramps, so we're putting that on there, and it just kind of, you know, little innovations were happening, but not big, huge jumps anymore. Even today, I mean, there's really not much more going on with the addition of magnets and stuff, but that was being done, Gorgar?
Yeah.
Early, I mean,
Yeah.
so, yeah, so once you kind of accept that a little bit in your head, it makes it a lot easier because it allows you to start thinking about how you can take those existing things and just combine them in a different way to make it kind of fun. And again, those combinations have also most likely been done too, so it's just, you just need to find a good balance that you're happy with.
And the playfield by itself doesn't make the game. I feel like adding good rules to it really helps. Like, you can have a mediocre playfield, but you can have a great game with good rules. So like you said, there's a balance to it. So.
That's one of the cool things about retheming, I think, versus custom is you can go online and go grab the instruction manual for the pin, and usually they've got a black and white line drawing of the playfield where all the pop bumpers and all the lanes and everything are, like usually the rubber replacement diagram or something. You can take that and you could actually like look at it and say, well, if I were going to do the game with this theme, here's what I would make these shots, here's what the inserts would be. You could actually just look at that and start drawing on it and start thinking about what you want to do. Even that flyer that got passed out, on the back of it is a blank playfield drawing to kind of give you an idea. You can mess around with that and kind of sketch around.
That's exactly what I did with mine, which I wish I could prop them because they're no free right now. But basically, I had like a small vectorized image from Gottlieb for like their rubber like kit for replacing it, and was able to blow it up to life size and printed maybe a dozen copies off. And you know, that's where I was like adding information on my inserts, labeling switches, thinking up mode ideas, and just writing one that's not like margin or whatever. And I have lots of versions of them, and it's different for me because it's not like I was cutting playfields, but I was just trying to, you know, again, make best use of what I had given to me.
And that's just an easy, you know, charge way to get into it.
Yeah.
You just start messing around with it, right? And, you know, even if you're doing a custom one, just thinking about the rules and how you would want to play the game and what you would want to go through kind of helps guide your playfield design. You know, I think I even did it wrong with Spaceballs at first, where I tried to make an interesting playfield and thought I'll just come up with some rules that kind of fit that. And there were some things where I kind of wish I'd done that or added an extra target here, because now this doesn't really make sense unless I do that. And that costs yet another revision to go through again and more time. So it's interesting how they kind of play off each other. You kind of want to know your rules as you're going into it. So again, a real low-cost way to start is just, what would my rules be? What would that look like, even for getting the shots? Like, what do I want the objectives of my game to be? What would the modes be like? Is there a wizard mode? How do you get there? What does it feel like? What are my jackpots? You know, what makes it complicated? What makes it harder as you progress through the game? What separates when a novice plays versus a pro plays? How do they feel in the game? You know, are they able to progress so much more that you go, wow, that guy really is a much better player on this game? Scoring balance, yes.
Do you even suggest having at least a complete framework of a rule set before you even put pen one into it and start with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think they come hand in hand, right, too, you know, because like there are some rules you come up with where you're like, well, I can't really implement on that playfield because I can't get 3 balls spinning around a magnet or something like that.
Right, so I guess once you already have it done, you sort of...
Yeah, there's definitely like a synergy between them.
Yeah, so once it's already built, then you're kind of limited.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and come clean here. I did not think of my rule set
Really?
before I did my playfield design. And it actually is something that came back and bit me a couple of times during development. So I wanted to make an 80s style playfield, which was just, you know, with this like layout that I had. And I started jotting it down. I built this whole layout. I knew that I wanted like a reactor core up top, so I drew that in. I knew I wanted a weird placed pop bumper, so I drew that in. I started just kind of, everything else just kind of filled in, and I kind of put targets and everything where it just made sense. Like, you know, just if you were just to flip it, it kind of makes sense what's going on. Now, I had to add and remove a few things just when I started making the rules, but you'll notice that there's only 7 destroy targets on the bottom playfield, and that is an artifact of the fact that I didn't think about that one thing enough. It should have been 9 destroy targets on the bottom. Interesting. But there's only 7. So I didn't think of that actual destroy rule until it was way too late. So it's still jammed in there. You can still find ways to jam things in there like that, but it's not ideal. I wouldn't recommend doing what I did.
Yes.
So you talked about your that or something smaller, maybe for actually smaller. What do you say is the biggest area you're
Yeah, so you want to start down there?
I had to rewire my machine like 3 or 4 times because I did it incorrectly multiple times. And it was a rat's nest the first time, and then I found a way to make it look better, and then found I still was rewiring, I was just wiring things incorrectly. So, I mean, again, the hardware side of it is probably, I mean, even though it kind of sucked and I had to do it many times, I mean, I know the machine in and out now, so at least there's that. But, I mean, I guess it could be a lot worse, right?
Absolutely. It's about to be really worse thing when I start talking. So I made so many errors when I started making TNA that it's kind of funny. I'm just gonna think of a few and give you some examples. There's some like design errors that I made, and then there are some just like stupid things that I did. So the design errors when I first made my first and second cuts of the playfield, I had I don't know. You guys are familiar with Paragon, right? So Paragon has this like little path, the squiggly path. I forgot what it's called. What's that called? It's a waterfall? Yeah, so the squiggly path that's up top. And I had this in my head, and I'm like, man, I want to use something like that. It'd be great. So I had inline drop targets going up a squiggly path, right? And I'm in my head, I'm like, that's going to work. It's totally going to work. You'll be able to shoot it. It'll make sense. The ball will work, right? Yeah, no, it doesn't work at all, actually. So you can't. The ball just rattle in there and fall out because it can't make multiple direction turns like that. So it looks good on paper, right? But then you should shoot it, and you're like, yeah, exactly. So that's out, right? That was the first mistake. The second mistake I made is there's a scoop behind 3 drop targets on TNA, and originally I had, instead of that scoop there, I had a little loop that went around into a hidden area, which was a kicker. So it would go and it would sit on top of this like knocker mechanism. And the idea was that when it was ready to launch the ball out, it would fire that mechanism and fire it into the orbit all the way around. I'm like, that's awesome. That's so cool. You hold it, just fire it around the orbit out of nowhere. So the problem with that is that entering an orbit from a weird angle like that, it worked like maybe 10% of the time, and most of the time it just rattled around and got stupid in there. So those are things that you learn when you do it. And I tried adjusting the angles of things, and I cut one more playfield, it just wasn't working, so I scrapped it. And you don't feel bad making mistakes when you do this kind of stuff. This is what it is. I mean, it's all, the whole thing is just making a whole bunch of mistakes until you get somewhere that you're happy with. But then, I've actually got a CNC machine in my garage that it's called an X-Carve. It's like 1,000 millimeters by 1,000 millimeters, which is like, not big enough to cut a playfield. So it takes me a really long time to actually cut a playfield because I have to cut like the top half and then slide it down and then cut the bottom half, and then it has to like cut the whole thing out. It has to line up perfectly. But I spent like 6 hours cutting a playfield one time, and I cut the inserts at the top of the playfield, and I had the CAD file wrong, and everything else was 100%, and then the inserts, like the little star rollovers I had, wouldn't fit. It was cut too large. So I ended up donating it somewhere. I don't remember where. That
Whole playfield gone.
Dude, I had 6 hours wasted all day working on this thing. It was ridiculous. But you'll make stuff like that. I mean, that happens. You can't find everything all the time. So, I'm sure I could think of some more funny stories, but that's the majority of what happened.
Mine was definitely the cabinet. It was actually 1/4 inch too big. It wasn't 1/4 inch too small. So, which wasn't a problem until I tried to put glass in it. And if you shifted the glass to one side, you could get it to fall in. Yeah, so I actually brought that machine to SFGE last year the year before I fixed the cabinet, and I had 3D printed little oh shit supports. So in case somebody accidentally grabbed the glass to push it, it would only fall down like half an inch or something. But yeah, that was probably the worst one. My buddy Rick actually came over and helped me swap everything out of the messed up cabinet into a brand new cabinet over a day. So.
You cut that cabinet yourself?
Yeah, I have an X-Carve like Scott does, and like you said, it takes forever too. So when you do that, it's so disheartening. You're like, that was like 12 hours with the CNC work.
Couldn't you just get another piece of glass that was the right size?
Yeah, but again, it comes back to doing everything custom or not. It's so easy just to buy a piece of glass from like Pinball Life or Marco that's the standard pinball size. Whereas if you start doing everything custom, it gets really weird and expensive, and then you got to remember, that's the weird cabinet that needs 1/4 inch bigger glass. So if you ever do decide to even just sell your one-off machine to somebody down the road, you're like, hey, by the way, not only did I wire this thing kind of weirdly, but you got to buy special glass for it too. It probably uses different size nuts for everything, whatever. So try to keep it all the same.
And again, that's something I want to emphasize. Something that you just touched on too is using standard parts. So a lot of people, when they start building machines, they're like, oh, I can make this custom part right here. I'm going to redesign the pop bumper assembly. I'm going to do this and that. Like, that is a really, really bad thing to do. Like, what you should be focused on doing is working on a design of your game, making it fun, and using everything that you can find that's pre-made, that's pre-engineered, it's pre-tested. You know, that will save you so much time. There are cheap ways of doing things when it comes to the electronics. There's an open source pinball platform called OPP. Nothing wrong with it, but it's something that you build yourself. It will save you money, but it will eat up so much of your time. Debugging it could be tough if you don't really know a lot about electrical engineering. That's why when you go with something like you're building this pinball machine, you're ready to put electronics in it, you might want to think about the cost of one of the more expensive systems that already is pre-engineered and pre-tested and has support groups and huge communities of people. You might want to think about the cost per time that's going to save you.
The P3 Rock is in production games. I mean,
Oh, yeah,
that's a solid system, right? Because it's in TNA, it's in Houdini.
Lebowski used it. It's in the P3 games.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's pretty proven, right? I mean, like he's saying, sometimes you want to spend the money, right, and get actually, you know, you're going to plug in and it's going to light up and it's going to work and there's support there.
yeah, and if it doesn't light up, then there's a place you can go to like say, hey, this isn't working. What do I do? You know.
On that note, my table is a Gottlieb, and so the original Gottlieb coils that were on there are awful, and they're wound backwards compared to like Williams and Stearns. So I would definitely suggest not using their parts if you can, and just
Okay, so Gottlieb parts.
go ahead and dive into Williams and Stearns. Just nip that in the bud. I was ready to throw mine in the lake after hours of just trying to figure out why my machine wasn't flipping properly, and it was just because they were wired backwards, or they're wound backwards, so they had to be wired backwards, and it was just very confusing and unnecessarily. So.
I don't know if this is Scott's idea, probably was. There's a whole homebrew pinball section on Pinball Life's website that has the flipper mechs, the scoops, the pop bumpers. I mean, it's kind of the shopping mall for if you're doing a homebrew pinball and you want Williams, standard parts. There's that whole homebrew section on Pinball Life's site that's really got a ton of stuff. That's where I go to get all my stuff for that.
Absolutely. So that's just all the generic stuff. So it's a huge resource for people because you're like, hey, I need some lights or something. You're like, well, here's all the lights that usually homebrew people use or whatever. It also, that homebrew section on pinballlife.com actually is a good place to go for recommendations because we carry a ton of different flipper mechanisms for all these different years of games. And the only thing you'll find in the homebrew section are the WPC ones that are actually less expensive than the others, just because they work well with the multimorphic and fast hardware. And even people running OPP, they work really well. And they're heavily documented and heavily tested, just an industry standard at this point. The reason that the Stern mechanisms aren't in there is just because they're expensive. That's all. Because I was actually from Stern, so it's...
Yeah. Okay, we're a little past halfway through. Want to stop and see if we have any other questions right now? Anybody want to ask?
I have a question for each of the individuals on the panel. Just as people going through this process, throughout the process or towards the end of the process, what is the most unexpected thing that you found or came across, or something that maybe surprised you that you wouldn't have expected at the start of the process towards working through it? Because there's a lot of energy that goes into this.
I guess for me, again, not being anywhere savvy with programming at all, I thought the electrical and like just the normal hardware side of it was going to be easy, and maybe the rest of the project would be like that too. I got my way through the hardware side, and it was great, and I was happy with what I had done. My machine turned on, it flipped. But then when it came to actually like problem solving for deciphering your code and figuring out where you've gone wrong and how to make it better, for me that's the biggest challenge. I guess, again, zero experience going into it, so again, the community is wonderful for that. Everybody is so nice, and everybody has an answer for you. It might take you a day or two to sort through your problem, which again, like making it your own machine, it's a long, long process. I've been working on Zelda for 3 years, and most of it was hardware, but the last year has been software. And you know, every time I run into an issue, if I can't figure it out myself, it might take a couple days or a week to figure out, and then I'm faced with another issue right after that. So,
for me, it's probably the time. I think I've been on Spaceballs for 5 or 6 years now. It's just like, you know, I've enjoyed every bit of it. It's not gone too long for me, I think. I'm just doing it as a hobby. I'm not doing it for any goals, any kind of production or anything. I think Scott even wanted to make a note about that a little bit, about how to not go for that. Yeah, but, you know, it's just been a fun thing. So it's, hey, the kids have gone to sleep for the night, I'm going out in the garage, I'm going to tinker for an hour or two. There's no expectation that I'll get it done next year or anything like that. But I will say I didn't think it would take me like 6 years to get where I am. It's just things, you know, you run into, and they're not showstoppers, they're not super frustrating, they're just like, oh, I got to redo all that, or, you know, but it gives you a chance to go back to, like your wiring and stuff, you're like, well, I guess it's kind of okay, because I get to go back and I get to take what I've learned and make it a little better this time, a little better. So it's iterative, you know, you start thinking about the design more, and you honestly can't write down everything you would need to know beforehand to tell somebody, because half of it they wouldn't believe you anyway. But the other half, just, you know, it's things you got to learn as you go through it, and you feel for it, and you feel that geometry, and you start feeling how things work together. And, you know, the wiring becomes less of a concern because you just start figuring that out, and then you start moving on to the real problems, like, hey, these modes are conflicting with each other, these targets won't be used for the same thing. I'm starting to figure those things out and figuring out your light shows, and that's really fun stuff. And you kind of want to get to that point and start doing it, and that's why I go back again to start thinking about your rules, thinking about what you would do, and start playing with the software. Like, I know you can download Skeleton Game or MPF and even start acting like you're coding a pinball machine and run it virtually, right, just to see what it's doing. You know, press keyboard switches to simulate switches on the playfield. You know, I've hit these drop targets, what happened? And that doesn't cost anything. You can just go and do that on your computer today. So again, good ways to get started, but the time is probably the thing I least expected. You know, how many weekends I would call friends in to help, and oh shit, this has got to be ready for some show, so we've got to cram all night to get software done, or wiring's got to be done, something like that. So.
Yeah, and again, it's exactly what I was going to go with at the time. So for me, I set myself timelines. When I first started the project, I said it was, let's see if I can recall this properly. I think it was November of 2015 when I sat down and said, I'm going to actually do this. I'm going to make this game, and my goal is to have a flipping game at Expo 2016. So I gave it just, you know, just about a year. Actually, we'll listen. But so that year, I spent trying to get a game. I didn't even care about the software at that point. I just wanted the flippers to work and get to just, you know, do something. And I was able to push really hard. I have a very understanding wife who's actually sitting in the audience over there. Yeah, but the time commitment is pretty massive if you set aggressive timelines to yourself like that. I don't recommend that either. I recommend doing the approach of just, hey, let's just build this. Let's, you know, however long it takes. You know, it is the adventure of building this whole thing that people should be going after. For me, when I first originally built this, I had no intention at all of this game ever seeing production. It was built for myself because I wanted a pinball machine with, you know, certain things in it and certain characteristics that I could play with my friends for dollars and bring to shows and, you know, share with people, talk to strangers about it. And I thought the things that I wanted in a pinball machine, I thought were not being fulfilled in the current market. So that was my major driver for doing that. But that should really be the ultimate goal for homebrew. I'm not saying that if someone wants to build a homebrew game and come up with ways that they can market that, I mean, you can go that route if you really want to, but I don't think that's, you know, the spirit and nature of the adventure.
Just to kind of tag along with what Scott said, I mean, owning a pinball company, I started out doing a custom Godzilla game. What he just said is exactly the part I miss the most about doing custom games. Number one, I can't spend the time to do anything custom anymore because I have to spend that time doing stuff that you hope a lot of people like. I can't do something just for me anymore. You know, we do a Godzilla game. I don't give a flip if anybody likes it but me. Now you can't think that way. You have to kind of appease the masses the best you can. So just kind of envy all you guys sitting up there because that's what I loved about pinball, and I still do. But now you have to think bigger picture, and are you making the license happy? Are you making the customers happy? But to kind of watch Scott's game go from, he only did it because he liked it.
In fact, I said no to Charlie before we were talking.
2016 Expo was the first time that I actually said to Scott, we should make this. And he's like, shut up.
I think a lot of us are glad you did it though.
Yeah,
It's pretty awesome. Yeah, it's pretty sweet. Scott's being pretty humble when he says he did it all himself and not really explaining that. He did the music, everything. Like, it's amazing the talent that Scott has to do all that stuff. I can't speak for Wilder, but I don't have that kind of talent to do the music and stuff like that either. So, you know, I got lucky at Charlie's point with license and stuff. I'm doing Spaceballs. I don't have no interest in talking to anybody about licensing anything like that or putting myself through that kind of hell. So, you know, think about that too. It's a lot of fun and very unrestricted when you're doing a one-off game, especially with licensed property. You can pretty much do whatever you want with their assets. I think it becomes a complete, total, utter nightmare from what the stories you hear in the industry about licensing and what they demand and what you can and can't do. So, you know, consider that stuff. Do it for fun, I think what everybody's saying.
Yeah, Nintendo would never allow me to make a Zelda.
Right? Even the Spaceballs is all about merchandising. I don't think they do it.
That's funny.
What other questions do we have? We're about 3/4 of the way through, so I think we're open to questions now.
Yeah, I just had a quick one though. Just you mentioned getting started with geometry, future pinball is an option, and do you prefer that to what are the other ones? Visual pinball? And
Oh, you know, visual pinball was the one I actually used. Future pinball is along the same lines. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know a lot about those. I've only actually played around with them one time, but I know that one of them is driven by Visual Basic. So if you're comfortable in Visual Basic, you can actually add some grownups. I know. But if you're comfortable in that language, you should look at one of those to start with.
yeah, I guess this is kind of a follow-up. I just, as far as assuming you come up with some sort of a design you kind of like in one of those programs, the process of getting it semi the same way on either a piece of plywood or a CAD program or something. I mean, is that something you just kind of manually have to do? I mean, I've read that some people are playing around with exporting in some way.
Yeah, but how accurate is that going to be? You know,
yeah,
you're going to have to remake if you're going to actually CNC a playfield. And you're going to send it to somebody to CNC, you're going to have a really accurate CAD file anyway. So you're either going to need to take, as I said earlier, a blank piece of wood, sketch it on there the best you can, do what you can, cut out things until you're happy with it. You can actually take that piece of plywood and give it to a CAD person, and they can help you get that converted so that it can be replicated into like a good piece of maple or something. But I wouldn't recommend using the Future Pinball or the Virtual Pinball platforms. I don't even know how many there are. I think there's more than just the two. I'm not totally sure. But anyway, I wouldn't use those for exporting.
The physics of those, they're good, but they're slightly off.
It's
There's
a
some odd
video
things.
game.
Yeah.
That was kind of my
Yeah.
that was kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah, if you directly transfer that out and export it out, you find
I
pretty
think there are
quickly
ways
you
to
run
do
out of
it
it.
though. I think you can do it, but I just don't think it would lend itself well in real life.
Yeah, I mean, I did a lot of the Spaceballs. The first playfield I actually cut had like the bottom on it, the Italian bottom, I guess, whatever it refers to it as, with kind of the in lanes and the slingshots and the flippers. And then I didn't have anything up top. And then I just started really hot gluing down like foam strips and all kinds of stuff to kind of start laying that out, and then I just started shooting on that. And then, like Scott says, I transferred that back into a CAD program once I kind of figured out where things were. And every iteration's been kind of that. Cut it, make some manual modifications, and when I'm ready for the next one, transfer what I did back to the digital file and cut it again.
I remember Ben telling me, Heck telling me that he made some type of a program for the phone course and he could grid everything out. Does he share that with anyone, or is that just?
I don't think he shared it with anybody.
All it is he would give me a sheet of foam card and we would print a 1/4-inch grid on it. So he would screw things down before he even touched it digitally. And then he could look at the foam piece and go, oh, well that's 3 1/4 inches in from here and 15 inches down from the top. And that's, yeah.
That's something you learn after, I guess, doing it a dozen times and then going down. I wish there were just grid lines on this thing. So yeah, those are the kind of tricks that, like I said, you just can't write down and explain to somebody and go, oh, you should put grid lines on there, or even think about that think about that kind of stuff, even if you don't do that.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what too, I did not come up with this idea. I heard it somewhere, I don't know who said it to me, but someone said that a really good idea would be to cut an Italian bottom with the, just the bottom flipper area out of a piece of whiteboard. Have you ever seen that or heard about that?
No.
And you can just take a dry erase marker and then just do this, and you're like, nah, that sucks. And you're like, do this, that sucks. Was that you?
That's how I do my layouts.
Really?
I just have white
guys.
fields cut with
Heard it here first. Shut the camera off. Let's go.
Walk away.
Okay, well, Charlie gets credit for that.
Yes, sir.
When it came to the retheme of the Gladiators, you talked about pulling out all the Gottlieb stuff. So did you pull the harness and everything off the back of the playfield?
All the wiring, yeah.
All the wiring.
The original, all the mechanisms stayed, minus the flippers, which I replaced. Anything with coils, actually, I pretty much replaced. Switches and all that stuff is still there, but the entire wiring harness had to come out. All the lights had to be rewired. All the switches, coils, all of it. But that's just part of the process.
They usually use different technology, like they use matrices for switches.
Yeah, I've got a
and
Street
lights.
Fighter 2 with the switch matrix. I couldn't imagine trying to program
Yeah,
with that cross.
it's like most of the new hardware, like P-Rock and Fast,
The
it's all
hardware,
direct switches.
the hardware deals with all that stuff
Yeah.
too, though. I mean, you can get matrices to work. Like there are modules that plug into these things that have like lamp matrices, and you wouldn't, from a programming perspective, even know it was a lamp matrix. You're just referencing like a lamp name, and it's just like it just figures it out. Matrices are pretty old school though. They're, as funny as it is, none of the new pinball frameworks really have support for like a switch matrix.
Yeah.
This does.
That's what,
No, I mean, I think, like you
it's all
said, they've
direct
got a
now.
daughter board, matrix board you can buy, but
Yeah, but I think it's all direct now.
Yeah.
It's more simple to work on. It's easier for me.
Much easier to work on.
I feel like light shows are one of those things you kind of see and don't really realize how much work goes into it. You can't really appreciate it. Like, how do you guys develop your light shows?
I guess for me, I've done most of mine manually, which is a terrible way to do it because it is, painstaking. You have to, if you've ever stared at an attract mode and just kind of watched it do its thing and try to figure out when it kind of restarts itself and such, there's a lot of stuff that's going on basically, and you can program it individually, light by light, second after second to make it do what you want. There are easier ways to do it, but my experience, I still have trouble with that because I guess Mark made that light show creator, which allows you to send images basically across your playfield using the lights as I guess like a monitor, canvas,
Yeah.
and that makes it. It looks great, and that's the way to do it. Doing it individually is the wrong way to do it. I think I've made it work for now, but I will need to figure this out soon.
And for me, I've done a hybrid approach. So I used to do some contracting for Dutch Pinball, and Dutch Pinball had a light show generator that they used for Big Lebowski and for the Bride of Pinball 2.0 project. And part of my contract allowed me to use that to start and to get my hands wet with, just get in there and play with it a little bit. Some of my light shows that are running in the production version are exports from that system still, but I switched over to a skeleton game light show generator, which is pretty much exactly the same as what these guys are using. basically allows you to just take an image or a movie and just play it over the top of your playfield. You map where the inserts are in a visual little format, and you just play a movie across it, and it exports out the file for you, and it really takes no time. It almost feels it's cheating. Because I mean, you see guys like this, like just, hey, I totally just did that by hand, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like, how many hours are you doing that? Like,
Spending too much time on hunches.
yeah, it does. It definitely feels like cheating. But all the like Stern and Jersey Jack also use light show generators just like that. If you guys notice something interesting, I don't know how many Jersey Jack machines are down there, but on, I believe it's on Hobbit. If there's a Hobbit down there, that when the Jersey Jack logo comes up on the monitor, look down at the playfield, because what's happening is they have the Jersey Jack logo actually on the playfield in the inserts.
That's cool.
It was something I noticed one time, and I'm like, all right. And I'm like, it's right there. It's kind of hard to see. You gotta like squint your eyes, because basically a playfield is just a super, super low resolution display at this point. So it's kind of interesting. I don't know if Dialed In or Wizard of Oz did that. I don't think Wizard of Oz did, but Dialed In and Hobbit probably.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that about the inserts and the kind of being the low resolution display. Some of my first playfields didn't have enough inserts to do cool light shows like that, because you need actually a decent amount of them to get enough pixels, for lack of a better word, on your playfield to show, like, if you're playing a fire movie and want it to kind of look like fire on the playfield, you got to have enough of them for it to actually look like something. So one of my revisions was just going back and adding 24 more inserts. Figure out what they're for later, but add them in so that I could actually get higher resolution on the playfield when I played like a sweep on the playfield, so it actually looked more connected as it moved through.
It's a future self problem.
Yeah.
Deal with that later.
I saw somebody over there.
I was gonna say Wizard of Oz definitely does the matching thing. That's
It does have the
when it
Jersey
does
Jack
the
logo.
Jersey Jack logo. It does like a sweep of like red to blue.
That's super cool.
I have to pay attention next time and like almost stand back.
Yeah,
and
squint
see if
your
it
eyes
does
real
match the
hard.
logo.
I'm pretty damn sure it's
There's definitely enough lights on it to pull that off. Like,
Absolutely.
it's pretty impressive to look at in that game.
Absolutely. But all in all, there are generators that do those light shows. It really does not take much time. The video generation to make those light shows when you're actually making the actual animation for it, that takes time, but the generation of it does not.
We're about up on time. Do you have a question?
Oh, yeah, real quick. Question about all the different programming frameworks that are available. I'm sure you guys, when you were starting projects, evaluated them all. And I started a retheme, and when I started, I picked Skeleton Game because I figured, well, it's runs DNA. Surely it's going to be able to handle it if I'm going to throw at it. But the issue I had was I'm actually retheming a Slugfest, which doesn't have things like 3 balls per game, player 1, player 2, everything, and it looked like a lot of Skeleton Game. A lot of the frameworks kind of have that built in. So trying not to ask too specific of a question, but when you guys look at everything, is there something that maybe doesn't do as much hand-holding to get a project?
The frameworks are it's an interesting subject, because there's the two main frameworks out there right now are Skeleton Game and MPF. They are two different beasts completely. Skeleton Game, and I can speak to this one obviously the most. I've done research on both though. I do know how both of them function. Skeleton Game is basically, as it says, it is an example game that is super bare bones, and it has very limited functionality when you first dump it onto into a machine. But it's there to show you an example of how everything functions. So you can then go in and reprogram everything, take things out, do whatever, but it's programming. I mean, there's not a lot of configuration files, although there are a bunch of configuration files, but not a lot when it comes to rules or custom functionality. All that stuff has to be programmed by hand in Python. But there are nice examples for it. But then I'll touch on MPF and then I'll turn it over to these guys because they actually use it. The MPF system is more of a utility that allows you to just set a bunch of config files, and it pretty much does the programming for you. There is still a little bit of programming involved, but it is like, hey, if I want, this many balls per game, here's where I set it. If I want, you know, here's my target mapping. If this target gets hit, score X amount of points, right? So that's super basic, but you get the idea. So that's pretty good too, and that's great for people who don't know a lot about programming and just want to dip their toes into it, because you still get to see the Python code behind it. A lot of it runs very similarly between Skeleton Game and NPF. It's just NPF has a lot more built on top of it that is for pre-configurations.
Yeah, so to answer your question, I think sticking on your path of Skeleton Game is probably the better for what you're going for, because NPF, like Scott's saying, has a lot of stuff that baked in that, you know, the concept of player 1 through player 4 if you want, you know, the concept of 3 balls per game and trough management, and that's kind of unremovable from NPF. Like that's such a built-in thing to it that I don't think NPF would be right for.
Yeah, I started digging into the Python libraries for Skeleton Game, and I thought, I don't know if this is really.
Yeah, it starts to get hairy. You know, like
Okay.
NPF is designed for people
That's
who
fine.
really don't have any programming
Okay.
experience and just want to kind of customize some. You know, you can get into the Python with it and get real deep with it, but you know, its core is you're not a programmer. You want to config some files. You want an easy way to set up some modes and get some feedback immediately and start playing.
I definitely say there's still a learning curve with Python if you don't have any sort of experience. But it is, as someone with zero experience, it is probably the most legible programming language that's out there that I.
It's basically.
Yes, it's basically.
Python has no rules either, so
Yeah.
it's like you can make things anything you want. This could be a string, this could be a number at any point in time. Schrodinger's cat.
Data types and race conditions. All right, cool.
I had a super fun question.
Yes.
Outside of like a panel at a convention, what's like your go-to community when you have questions and problems and people that support you?
We can all say it on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, Slack.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a thing called the PinDev channel, I think, that is the public and it's open to the public. Anybody can come in there. I think there's a lot of P-Rock users. There's some fast users in there. But a lot of people are just interested in the custom pinball. That's the public one you can go into. There's a private fast one, just because there's really not a lot of fast documentation. It's kind of more of a raw system than the P3 Rock is. So the Slack is there more as a support channel to help people get set up without some other noise and stuff. But the PinDev Slack, I think it's open to anybody that.
Oh, it's open. Yeah. No matter what you're doing, you can come in there. Everyone's very friendly. There are industry people in there. There are people. Almost every single company is represented besides Jersey Jack. But there are industry people in there that like talking, which is pretty cool.
So definitely find the community. It's not a purchase where you go into a Best Buy and buy an Xbox and go home and you're alone by yourself forever. Building a custom pinball is very much building relationships and becoming friends with people, and because you're going to be asking them questions for the next 5 years, and you're going to be seeing each other at shows, and you're going to be hanging out. And, yeah, it's very important, especially in homebrew. You know, there's people that don't really understand when you tell them, "Hey, I'm building a custom pinball," and there are people that do understand that. You know, the nights you spent there going, "Damn, what do I do about this shot?" Or just all the stuff you've been through. So it's kind of cool to talk to people. And like I said, it's an ongoing thing. So it's not a one-and-done transaction. It's a relationship that you build with people and keep going.
The fast Slack has maybe like 40, 50 people in it, something like that. And everybody's in different levels of completion on their table. Some people are just getting started. Some people are still dreaming. Some people are, have hardware, and some people are done. So I mean, there's all different levels of just brain power there. And some people are very just about everybody's very friendly. They will give you answers if you have questions. So.
You start teaming up with people with different skill sets too. You'll find there's an artist in the group. I'm sure Pinball is an artist too that is willing to help out or give advice. And there's electronic engineers that are willing to help out and give advice. There's programmers. So you kind of go in there and you kind of lean on different people. And I need help with art. I'm a great programmer. I'm a great electrical engineer, but I suck at art. I'm terrible at it. I suck at sound too. So I lean on other people for help with that. Or even just how did you get your graphics printed for your cabinet? Like, there's some guy that found an art shop and he went through the trials of getting them to do it and figuring it all out, and now we all have a way to get it done. So really it's just meeting those people and figuring it out.
I have something that I get asked a lot. This is just a little bit, it's still on the same subject here, but it's something I get asked a lot that actually wasn't brought up yet tonight, but people ask me how I get my display, the LCD screen on TNA to actually, display stuff. And there's no smoke and mirrors. It's actually just a laptop screen. Like it's hooked to the computer that's running the framework, and the framework's just displaying that on the monitor. Like that's the desktop. Yeah. So it's a Linux system. So it's an embedded Linux system. So it's like it doesn't have like a mouse or keyboard or anything like that. But it's just displaying stuff from the computer. Some people are intimidated by that. It's actually harder to not use an LCD than it is to use an LCD.
Yeah.
I tried not to. I really did. It's too hard.
Okay. We're up on time. Does anybody else have any other questions they want to ask questions? Yeah.
Can you use free WPC program the game?
So free WPC, from what I know about, do you guys have any experience with this at
No.
all? Okay, so from what I know about this, free WPC runs on the WPC hardware itself.
Right.
It allows you to write code to those ROM chips, and you can burn them to the ROM chips. You are going to be very, very limited on the amount of RAM you can use, the amount of assets that can be loaded, the amount of rules that can be in the game. It is a very difficult thing to do. It is possible, but it's very difficult. There are no things in place with free WPC that limit just for instance, like if you hold a coil on too long, right? It doesn't know that and shut it off for you because something went wrong. It'll just hold the coil on and blow a fuse, or if you have the wrong fuse in there, it could burn up stuff. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend it personally. I know a lot of people who are low-level programmers do like stuff like that. Me personally, I do not.
Okay. Cool. I'm supposed to plug the SFGE app. Definitely want to download that on your phone if you don't have it already. It's cool. It's got the schedule. It's got like an interactive map in it. It's got an activity feed like you need on Facebook. So post on there what you're doing and stuff. But it's also got a rating where you can rate the session. The only choice is 5, so make sure you pick 5 stars. We get paid based on that. No, we don't get paid at all. Maybe. If it does, please choose 11. But please go in the app and rate us if you can. But please enjoy your weekend at SFGE. Yeah. If you have any questions, feel free to stay by and ask me or whatever. But thank you for coming.